Hey, Rom. Sorry the time got away from me.
I'm back.
Me too. I managed to get my call to my mother and even squeezed down some lunch, but I almost got
How,
later than one. I think I made it by a few seconds.
how is she?
Where or how?
How?
How? She's doing fantastic for her age,
And that
which,
is,
well, I'm just thinking about that because I claimed that she never told me her age, and she said, no, I have too. She was 19 when she was pregnant with me and 20 when she was born. And I am now soon to be 67, so she is 87.
oh, a youngster almost.
Yeah, she's doing tremendously well. She, has a little trouble. She was living in a townhouse where her bedroom was upstairs
Yeah.
and the living area was downstairs, and she was having more and more trouble getting up and down the stairs. So she knew she was going to have to do something. And my sister has MS, and she has had it forever. And, she goes through spells, but over time, it obviously has just gotten worse. And about a year and a half ago, she lost her husband, kind of unexpectedly. And it was through physical disease, but it wasn't anything they knew was coming. So she ended up home alone. So my mom sold her townhouse and moved in with her with the idea that it was just going to be her and my sister's dog. However, my my sister's child, my niece, who, for lack of a better description, is a very unique individual who has not fully developed yet past her own self, whatever, and now has moved back in there as well with her very noisy and obnoxious dog. So now my mother is living in the middle of constant chaos. And at first, when it happened, I confronted her with the idea of her moving in with Lynn and I because, for the most part, we lead a pretty quiet household. She would be able to have her own end of the house and not be disturbed by much of anything. But my mother is kind of a recluse. So she really doesn't like the idea of leaving where she's always been for most of her life. She grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and is still there in a suburb, but still in Columbus. And she doesn't like Florida
Oh,
that well, which is where
oh,
I'm at.
we have good friends in Columbus, Ohio.
Oh, how about that? Anybody I know?
Um, Karen and oh my God, I say good friends, and I'm not kidding, but
Oh, I got
uh,
CRS. I do it all the time.
Karen and Ben Maiden.
Doesn't sound familiar. The maiden
Karen
name
was
sounds
an
a
was
little
an art
familiar.
teacher at the university there. She
Okay.
was dean of the program of fine arts, I think.
Wow. I went to OSU for a little while, but not fine arts. And my mother actually worked there
Hmm.
at OSU for a while.
Anyway,
So they might know each other. Who knows? It used to be a small town, but it's not anymore.
yeah, true.
We used to jokingly call it Cowtown. Hello, Larry. Just want to acknowledge we saw you came on. You appear to be muted, but welcome.
Not muted anymore.
All right. Good to see you. How are you today?
Pretty good.
Rob and I were just talking about my family issues. No, my family in itself. Rob and I have known each other a little while through the
We
internet, but
we've all got them. They're like opinions.
that's right. So we hadn't really got into talking about anything yet, but anything you want to talk about today, Larry?
Can't think of anything specific right this second.
Okay, very good. And Rob, do you remember, was Larry on the last call you were on?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, very good. So you might know then a little bit about each other. But Rob and I are actually members of a couple different, I wanted to say Zoom groups, but they're not really Zoom groups, but they're internet groups, Zoom or Google Meet or whatever they are. They vary. But where we talk about things about God and such. So we get to cover all kinds of topics. I'm going to just check real quick. Forrest said he wanted to be on today, and I know he's had trouble getting on before, so I'm going to see if he messaged me if he's having any trouble. Feel free to jump in, anybody. No, he doesn't say anything yet, so I don't think he's having any trouble. That's good. And yeah, I'm sure now that I see you, Larry, I'm pretty sure I'm remembering. You basically are, we're having a little bit of struggle with the Christian church, but not a lot of struggle. You're still attending. Is that correct remembrance on my part?
Yeah, I'm just kind of in a odd position of split allegiance that I'm trying to work within the Catholic Church with but with lots of agreeing with most Protestants about the things that are wrong with the Catholic Church. But
Well, you might also agree with most Catholics about what's wrong with the Protestant churches.
that's probably true. Yeah. Yeah. So I've got my pet peeves, but you got to wonder, the things that you just can't figure out why people like it, but they like it. Is, for instance, um, the constantly repetitious choruses they sing in a lot of these warehouse style churches where you go in and you feel like you're going into a cave. It's dark and they got the spotlights on and the fog machine going, and you can't hear yourself think because the music is so loud. That's my pet peeve about what's going on in a lot of Protestant churches. The bigger mega church, or those that want mega church wannabes, I guess.
Yeah, I know. My wife and I were talking about it earlier today, and she and I both really, I guess, are of that group of people that have attended church regularly in the past, her more so than I, and don't really attend a church regularly right now. And she was saying how she wishes there'd be a resurgence of going to church, that type of thing. And I told her, I said, yeah, I can see that point. I know a lot of people who feel that way. I said, but I almost wish it'd be like a new church. And by that I mean a church where we're not so content on just scaring people out of hell, so to speak, but preaching the good news of God and Jesus and all that. And she said, yeah, but the thing is, the resurgence I've seen, this is my wife talking, and I agree with her, she's right, has been in exactly what you're talking about, Larry. It's been the big mega churches, the big um, shows, put on a show, huge concert choirs as part of the church service kind of thing almost. So I'm pretty sure that's what you were talking about, right? The mega churches.
Yeah. But it hasn't just been in the mega churches. I've been to some relatively small churches where you stand for 20 minutes or more singing songs that seem to repeat the same phrase about 100 times and just don't have any depth. And really, I got the problem that I can't sing, My wife keeps telling me, don't sing. You sound like
Sorry.
chalkboards mating. And so it kind of burns me that I have to stand there and expend so much time listening to a bunch of other people sing songs I don't even like. And I can't even participate without breaking my wife's ears. So,
That's funny. Hi, Forrest. I see Forrest was able to join us. Good to
Hi
see you,
guys.
sir.
We have a mutual friend who likes to speak about uh, classical or traditional church liturgy and culture as, and her pet peeve is you sit there and everybody's staring at the backs of the heads of everyone in front of them. And that kind of paints a literal picture of the way it's structured architecturally.
Where did we get this idea from? It's not the Bible.
They started out with house churches, of course. They didn't have church buildings for, I don't know, 100 years.
Yeah,
I've,
I know.
Constantine funded the early church buildings
yeah,
in a
I've
big
heard
way.
it's based on Roman public places.
Yes.
I heard it was Augustine. My son corrected me. I thought it was Constantine, but I guess Augustine got the ball rolling. He marketed it, the whole idea of clergy laity.
I thought it was interesting. Larry used the phrase that there just isn't any depth to the services, that a lot of people are just repeating the same old thing. And I think
Well,
that's honestly, at least from my viewpoint and what I've seen, what people are yearning for. They don't want to go and just, hear a bunch of the same rhetoric every week or necessarily the same even songs every week as getting some real depth and exploration and talking about, God or Jesus or whatever the case may be and how to really we were meant to live our lives here as being a more important part of the service. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, it's two things. One would be a critique of the theology, the philosophy, the teachings, the scripture. And the other is kind of a critique of the ecclesiastical culture of the liturgy, the rites and rituals, which vary across denominational lines. But so it's a big tent and a broad spectrum of questions or issues. But the liturgy itself sort of puts you in a box. And across the different churches and denominations, even including Catholic Orthodox as well as Protestantism, the liturgy is quite similar.
Yeah,
I
there's
mean, you
definitely
could say it's
similarities.
not. There are differences, but
there's very
that
little difference between the Catholics and the Protestants.
If you
you're
talk to
saying,
them, there is.
Well, I know, but you look at it from a structural perspective, you got
yeah,
clergy laity, and we didn't, the Reformation didn't go far enough on that.
that was what I was suggesting, yes.
As far as the service goes, the pews are the same. The procession is pretty much the same.
Right.
You got the singing at the beginning, and then some prayers, and then a sermon, and it's pretty much the same pattern, except like the Missouri Synod, Lutherans, the Catholics, the Anglicans, the Episcopalians, and the Orthodox spend a lot more time at every service doing the Lord's Supper. Whereas, a lot of Protestant churches, after the sermon, you may sing a couple songs and then that's it. Except maybe once a month you do, or once a quarter or whatever you do uh, Eucharist. But as far as the structure of the building and the way the pews are set up in there, it's not a lot of difference.
So formulaic.
I have been in some churches that have done it different. I mean, Solomon's Porch up in the West Minneapolis, you sit on couches in a circle,
Oh, wow.
And I was in a church plant for a while where they tried to follow that pattern, and we kind of sat in a circle, and wasn't just the preacher preaching that was, you know, they tried to emulate a bit of what it would be like to be in a living room. Generally, we were renting space on a school stage, but very small group, but they were trying something different. But it was officially it was a Christian Reformed church, and they were being a bit of a platypus. They didn't quite know what they were. They were trying to be Solomon's Porch and Christian Reformed at the same time, and so they didn't please any of the people any of the time.
That can happen.
One of the big distinctions is in a liturgical church service, I think across the board, it would be considered taboo to raise your hand and ask a question in the middle of a sermon or something.
Yes,
That the
absolutely.
audience is not really participating, but
Exactly.
observing.
You
Yep.
might get kicked out for it even.
You would. You would. You'd be
Have you
ushered out.
seen have you seen the cartoon strip Sheep Comics? Um, there's everybody in the audience are sheep, okay, and then you got the preacher up front. But there's this one sheep, I think his name is Lionel, and which is a joke on being a lion. And he's always, saying, "How come you people aren't speaking? How come you sheep aren't speaking up? How come you're not saying anything?" And it was pretty funny. It's just
Well, when it comes right down to it, you've got a very dangerous situation when you've got a clergy up there shooting his mouth off for X amount of minutes, dictating more or less what the congregation is to believe to a passive and disconnected audience. That's a dangerous situation, and nobody seems to see the danger in it. No one. I mean, my goodness gracious, I look back on all the crap that I've had to just throw out as pure garbage that I was taught as truth in my 50 years of sitting through that garbage. And I can't believe that there's not more thinking people out there that can see through this and see the dangers of the clergy laity system. It's
And
just mind boggling.
it's dangerous for the clergy too to be put on a pedestal like that and isolated and having to be an authority of some kind on things that are speculative in nature if they're supernatural or metaphysical. Um, and God knows the actual doctrine that you can extract from scripture and tradition is you could concoct anything in the world with a little bit of imagination and cunning. So those poor pastors or priests or ministers are suffer a lot of the sort of the temptations of and pressures of fame and notoriety and authoritarianism.
Two
Well,
things occur to me. When Larry was talking about, he can't believe more people don't see it. I think it becomes a thing. It's becomes a habitual tradition, I guess. It's what you grew up in, what you got to know, what you think is right. So you continue to sit there and do it. And then the other thing Rob just hit on, and I think it rang true to me too with for something you said is I'm part of a group called Pastors with Pastors or Pastors for Pastors or something like that. Not that I'm a registered pastor, but I don't know how I ended up there. And then I've also seen it not only in that group, but in Rethinking God with Tacos. Brings up a very good point. I never thought about how hard it is on pastors. I mean, everybody looks at them as they're the one up there on the stage and they're the one controlling all this. I think it weighs a toll on them bigger than you realize or than I realized for sure is something to consider.
well, I don't have any sympathy for them at all, Steve. If they would read their Bible, they would find out that they're not doing their job.
I
They're
get what you're saying.
I mean, their job is not to shoot their mouth off for X amount of minutes a Sunday and then ignore the congregation the rest of the week. That's
Oh,
not
without a doubt. Yeah.
that's not their job. And so I
No.
don't have any sympathy for them. I mean, if you're truly doing God's work, this is the way I look at it. You're never going to burn out. You're never,
Yeah.
because you got the Holy Spirit backing you.
The burnout is a form of feedback
Yes, it
Hmm.
is.
from
It is,
spirit.
Rob. Absolutely.
I would agree.
And it is part of the culture.
Well, it's religion is an addiction. It's an addiction. Simple as that.
Well, don't hold back now. Let us know how you really feel.
Okay.
From what I've gotten a little bit to know Forrest, I don't think you got to worry about him holding back.
No, I'll shut up there, guys.
Hey, Forrest, I got a question for you, and really I'm going to pose it to Larry as well, and maybe even Rob or myself, but I'll start out with you because I believe you are definitely one of the people who pretty much have given up on finding a church that you're going to fit into or a church you can go to. If you could design one that you would like going to, and I don't mean the structure of the physical building, obviously, what would that church look like? Have you ever thought about that?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Well, tell us, share.
Well, I want to hear Rob because I shoot my mouth off too much anyway.
No, you don't. We like it. Everybody's everybody's input is valuable.
I do.
Well,
I shoot my mouth off. Well, you talk about the architecture. I'm a retired architect. I worked as a licensed architect for over 40 years, and some of my clients were ecclesiastical organizations, churches. And you'd think, oh, what a wonderful client that would be. Warm and fuzzy, kinder and gentler. No, they're the worst clients in the world because they have a lot of conflicts of interest in their sense of mission. And when they would come to me or anybody in my capacity as a consultant to help them with a project, they're putting the church resources into the building and the infrastructure. And as promising as that is, it drains funds from from the other initiatives they're trying to do,
Yeah.
and they're usually reaching for the stars and reaching for your back pocket at the same time. And oh my God, what a freak show! But it is an interesting question of how the actual bricks and mortar uh, and space that's created, light and the five senses, smell and acoustics, affect the experience of being in the building and also affect the liturgy. If everyone's in aisles and rows and columns, facing the back of the heads of the people in front of them, it has a lot to do with what kind of dialogue or atmosphere you can create. The idea of sitting in a circle is great. That presents its own problems. Not that it's all about how you sit or what the space you sit in, but to me, there's also something a little depressing about a church that's in an abandoned retail space in a strip mall with concrete floor and ceiling tiles and fluorescent lights. I don't know, but it is a difficult question is how would you put together another form of liturgy? And then how would you create a space that enforces that? But what a great project to be able to work on. You have to
Amen.
be willing to step outside of the boundaries of what the way it's always been done.
I
I'm sitting
agree.
out here in a rural area, pretty much. Um, so you don't think in terms of blocks here, you think in terms of miles.
yeah,
Yeah.
So, but 5 miles over, which is it was just close when you're talking rural stuff.
yep.
Um, they're building a mega church, and I haven't been inside it, but from the outside, it looks like they're building, like you said, a block, a new Home Depot or something, right? So I would imagine they go inside, it's going to be a windowless cavern with lots of spotlights and theater seats. But that's my assumption. I haven't been in it yet. Maybe they'll break the pattern, but um, it's a branch of one. I think I saw it was like in the top 20 largest mega churches in the country. Um, Eagle Brook Church, centered out of the Twin Cities, and they've got a bunch of branches. So that's how they, in each individual branch is maybe a few thousand, but all together, that's huge.
Like a franchise operation.
There you go.
Yeah,
Corporation.
yeah. But I don't know how many of them they have one preacher that they put up on a big screen in all the branches or what. But
And that brings up an interesting question. Rob and I were talking earlier about the size of a Zoom meeting and the fact that once it gets too big, it can actually become way too big, where it's not as productive and people don't have a chance to participate. And you made me remember talking about this. I witnessed a service online. I mean, it was a live service somewhere, but I saw it online. And I forget, it seems to me like it might have been a Christian Universalist or Universalist church service. I don't remember which. I don't think just Universalist. But it was the first time I've ever seen where the preacher did get up and talk for just a few minutes on some subject or whatever. And then everybody in the congregation had a chance to come up and share, whether it was
Hmm.
a word of wisdom they heard, whether it was something they wanted to share about their life, whether it was a question they wanted to put up. And there must have been 20, 30 people that came up and shared something. And I thought that was different and unique.
well, I've been to,
And it is, and it's promising. It can
Yeah.
have cringeworthy results too,
yeah,
but that's okay, I think.
Well, if you look at what Paul said in Corinthians about our meetings, um, it's I don't like the word liturgy, but you get together, you sing a few hymns, songs, whatever. Um, there's no structure per se as to what's going to happen, but you share your lives with one another. Like everyone has a responsibility to bring something to that meeting. It's not a one man dog and pony show. It isn't. And until people get that mindset, um, things aren't going to change. I mean, I don't think buildings should even come into the equation because, like we said, it's a house meeting, and when the house gets full, you divide like cells and create. You get an elder that's strong in his faith, and you allow them to kind of um, move things around.
Franchise.
Yeah, so that there's not you know a cult forming, so to speak, in another cell group, but it's sharing our lives with one another, sharing our the problems that we have, sharing our victories that we have. I mean, it's just, and this is an antithesis to America because we don't value people, we don't value relationships, and we've um, confused acquaintances with relationships, and they're universes apart. And until we understand that relationships take time to form and develop and nurture, the home church is just pretty well done. I don't think that there's going to be much hope for it, to be honest with you. I got to go shut the water off. I'll be right back, guys.
Go right
Beat
ahead,
on me
Morris.
if you want.
I missed that. What did he say? Do what with him if we want? Oh, maybe pick on him while he's gone. It got me to thinking. And Rob, it probably is better at this and knows better than I. So Rob, please chime in and correct me if I have this wrong. But it got to me, and we were talking about this earlier. It got to me thinking about the word ecclesia. The original word for church was ecclesia. and I may not be saying that right, but you know what I'm talking about. And my understanding of that, it was a gathering of people. And they didn't just gather on Sundays for 1 hour. They gathered it multiple times throughout the week, and they gathered together to share meals and share thoughts and share needs and help take care of each other. Is that what the original ecclesia looked like in our understanding, Rob, to your understanding?
Well, two things that I think are real differentiators, and Forrest was just speaking of this. One is there was not envisioned a professional clergy that was the sole leader, for one thing. And the other thing, ecclesia, church, did definitely not mean a building. It was the people. When we say church now, I'm guessing most people first think of a building with a steeple, and and that right away is bypassing the whole point of the whole experiment.
Yeah. And didn't they gather to share not just meals, but needs with each other and
Yeah,
thoughts with each other and
and they got not a little piece of bread and some grape juice. They actually w fed each other.
Yes.
feast might
Yep.
be a better
Yeah,
word.
yeah.
Yep.
So the things we think of and take for granted as these ancient church traditions, so many of them, and we're just scratching the surface, are really modern or postmodern embellishments that we sort of redact backwards and say, well, this is the time-honored tradition.
Yeah, in reality, we're not taking it back far enough.
It was Soren Kierkegaard who said, "We live life facing and moving forward, but we understand life looking back." And in terms of our own lifetime, but also the lifetime of the community. And I don't think we have our historical perspective has um, been doctored.
So do you think maybe we are meant to come up with a better church, so to speak, a better ecclesia in today's environment or not?
It
There's
would be
I think we
nice,
have an
but let's be
obligation to.
realistic.
What's
Did you
that,
there's a
say
Larry?
something
sad
too, Larry? I
idea.
heard.
There's
Go
a
ahead.
sad idea that these things have been worked out and this is the way it should be and it shall always be this way and you don't want to question any of it. And what happens is as culture evolves and technology and economies and political governance evolves, your system becomes irrelevant.
Well, if you look at Western culture compared to Eastern culture, and Christ was involved in Eastern culture, they look at life totally different than Americans do. And this is something that people refuse to acknowledge. Our culture is killing us spiritually, and we cannot see this. We absolutely cannot see that.
The other group like this I'm involved with is based on Michael Heiser's.
Oh, we know, I know Michael.
Yeah, so we're always talking about, how do we see this through a first century or even before that Old Testament Jewish mind? In other words, like you said, through how would Easterners, the Eastern world, see this instead of, all the filters of the Catholic Church and the Reformation and evangelicalism and all these filters we put on to read the scriptures and try to understand this stuff. We need to scrape all that away and see it the way it was written for the original audience, how the original audience would have understood it, and the way that Paul and all the most of the New Testament writers spoke Hebrew and Aramaic, and they didn't think in Greek. They probably had to translate their thoughts to write them down in Greek. And so now we're stuck with all these Greek terms And a lot of times we misinterpret what it's trying to say because we lay all this Platonism and Neoplatonism and all that on top of it.
Is there a
Yeah,
current day solution to any of this? What's anybody think about that?
I'm
Well,
sorry, Steve, what was that?
Is there a current day solution to this? Is there some way to, you know, start something new, shake it up, I guess, get back closer to what it was meant to be to begin with? Is there a way to initiate something like that in today's climate and time?
you're
Well,
exemplifying it just by asking that question. Anything starts with little baby steps if you're a baby.
I am.
well,
Um,
there is some movement. It's a matter of, is there so much inertia behind? I'm thinking there is so much inertia behind all the institutional churches that all these little upstart things that are going on and think tanks like we're doing right now, you know, it's hard to imagine us being able to push back against that, all that accumulated, just think of all the people who are in love with their churches. They don't want to hear any other ideas.
you're right. You're right, Larry.
Now there are things going on, like, have you heard of the Alleluia community in Augusta, Georgia?
no.
I have not.
Although it's kind of a hybrid. They're Christians living in a trying to live. They kind of bought out a neighborhood, and they're
Mhm.
living geographically close together and getting together every day. But everyone there is required to belong to a local church, and they're everyone's. I mean, there's lots of different denominations represented. The Catholics are kind of the core group, but there's everybody else. And then there's other groups like that across the country. That's the one I can name off the top of my head because I'm Facebook friends with people that are in it, or at least are communicating with it all the time. Um, there's a lot of ecumenical things going on coming out of there, trying to get denominations at least talking to each other. And
What a concept.
yeah, I had a. It's been a real, how when it rains it pours. Um, I went from about last November until now, waiting for things to happen, and I just in just one realm, which was I've been in in trying to initiate some ecumenical things going on within our diocese, or not things going on, get some things going on. There's nothing going on. And I was waiting for that to happen. Well, just be a couple of weeks ago, the other thing I was kind of waiting for gelled, and all of a sudden that popped onto my, got landed on my plate, which is actually getting some disciple making going within my parish, um, and looking for leadership for that. So I got involved with that. It's still moving at glacial speed almost, but still it's moving now. Then a few days later, then all of a sudden I get something finally after about 9 months, I think, saying, okay, let's move forward with this ecumenical thing. I'm going, oh, okay. So now where I had nothing, now I got these two things. And so,
You're no longer sitting on the sidelines waiting.
right. And
Well,
like I say, I'm in that position where, although I'm very skeptical of the institution and I'd like to see something change completely, I'm realistic enough to know now that God has put me in a position where I can work from the inside, I'm not going to say, no, screw it. You guys are an institutional church. I don't like you. I'm not going to work with you. And it's not like, well, it's back to the initial question you'd ask, or the initial part of the question you'd ask about how would we structure a church if we wanted to structure a church starting, with a blank check. The first part of that was, if you can't find a church where you're comfortable, well, I'm never going to find a church where I'm comfortable, I don't think, but I'm involved in the church just because I got a little leverage there, right?
The
I'm not
leverage,
there because I agree with them. I'm there because they've given me enough so that I feel like I can make a difference.
well, that's commendable, Larry, and that place of leverage is kind of maybe the best place to institute change is you mentioned the inside. Is from the outside, you have no standing. It's impossible. But at the edge of the inside is a liminal place where you might be able to move around and create that leverage, the lever and the place to stand.
Right.
That the place to stand is at the edge of the inside where nobody's going to notice too much and you're not necessarily being too confrontational. And the
Yeah, that's the
opportunity,
trick, though. Controlling yourself enough to go, oh, when do
yeah.
I speak up versus when do I keep my mouth shut? So,
Yeah, you don't want to get decapitated. That's
well, you
not a
also,
goal.
That's my problem. I usually end up getting decapitated, you know.
this
Well,
last summer, yeah, you guys
Like John the Baptist.
are you guys familiar with Bishop Robert Barron?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, he's our bishop here, right here in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's here because it's closer to Chicago, which is his home territory. He was out in Los Angeles, but somehow the Pope dumped him here. Our biggest city in this diocese is 120,000 people, right?
Wow.
So, and that's Rochester, which is 7 miles that way. Um, and I'm in this little town of a couple thousand, which is basically you know, hardly a suburb. But anyway, he had a synod last summer, which is a crazy idea in the Catholic Church, where instead of looking at all the studies and all the research and all the wisdom that has accumulated through the centuries, you go out to all the parishioners and ask them what their opinion is.
Oh my.
So what does he do? He has a synod and he says, okay, what can we do to improve evangelization and vocations? And he asks it of all these people who might have an opinion, but that's about it because they don't have a lot of education in the subject. Most of them are afraid of the word evangelization. Um, but anyway, he had that. And then this last week, he had a 2-day meeting where we all went and listened to him say how he would like to implement the suggestions that came up from that. And so it's kind of funny. I've been to almost as many homilies in the last 9 months that Bishop Barron has given as I have of my own parish, but that's going to slow down. But anyway, so I went to this thing this week, and of course there were those times, like we were just saying, where I wanted to jump up and say, "Now hold it, wait a minute, you know, don't you think you should say this as well?" Or you know, that's implying something without going far enough, or that's implying something where you're going too far. But I
Be
don't think I
careful,
want to.
Larry. We want you to keep your head.
Yeah, that's it. It's I. Well, the funny thing is, I was one of the reasons I was thinking about not going because like I said, I'm kind of critical of the whole synod idea in the first place. But I went because I could meet with one of the people who has a directorship, you might say, within the diocese. He's the director of adult formation and a thing we call the Institute of Lay Formation, which I've been
Yeah.
through. Um, he has been put in charge of working with the priest who is now after 2 years, they finally they were supposed to have an officer of ecumenism in every diocese. We didn't have one for 2 years. The guy died. The priest died. They assigned another guy last December, I think. And the vicar general, which is kind of the second in command under the bishop, said, well, he'll get to you in the near future. Well, that was no December, and it's now June, and he never did get in touch with me, but the guy in charge of adult formation and the Institute of Lay Formation did get a hold of me and say, I'm going to work with you as we work with this priest who's the officer in charge of ecumenism. Well, I went to this thing just because I knew I could have a chance to talk to the guy in charge of adult formation. Well, the priest in charge of ecumenism also was there. So we sat at the same table at dinner. And the priest said, okay, Larry, how did you become interested in ecumenism? So I gave him no way to say it very short. It took me a few minutes to go through all the churches I've been involved with, how I became Catholic when I was 35 years old, but I bounced in and out. And and all the disagreements my parents had with a lot of my relatives, because some were Catholic, some were Seventh-day Adventists, some were something else. And so there's all these arguments in the house growing up. That's how I got interested in ecumenism, because I'm trying to figure out, is any of these people right? So I had to give him that little story. And at the end, I said, well, have I shoved my foot in my mouth far enough yet, or should I keep talking and get it in a little farther? And they all laughed. But so that's kind of the kickoff of meeting with these folks I'm going to be working with in the future. We're supposed to, get together and really seriously sit down sometime in the I hate to use that word near future now, because that could be 9 months out, the way this pattern's been going. But
Hey, it's forward movement though, right?
yeah, so
Well, the whole rubric under which change can find its potential, I think, is what you're hitting on, is active participation and involvement among lay members of the congregation, so that the dichotomy, the harsh boundary between clergy and laity is sort of dissolved, especially in the higher churches, Episcopalian or Roman Catholic. You've got more hierarchy to burn through than some of the others. And that becomes, I think, a big culture of what the priesthood has inculcated in them. But you're sounds like you're on the front lines doing about the best you could do within a church community. I have bounced in and out of church communities. I spent 4 years in seminary, and I graduated just with a master's degree in theology, just short of being ordination material, which would have required a little bit of pastoral clinical education. But I had no interest of doing this professionally to earn a buck. Um, but when I went into and out of churches over the years, I'm not involved in any right now, but I've been quite involved in the past. As I would enter a group, as we would move from place to place, I would usually start by not just going to church and putting a lot of money in the offering plate, but discreetly inquiring, do you have a Bible study group or a book study group? And I would sneak in through the side door, and I'd be fairly comfortable until I got to be in a position of being a lay Eucharistic minister or or a vestry nominee or something like that, and I would just freak out and I had to leave. So I've learned to stay on the edge of the inside if I'm on the inside at all. But actually, I think we're all on the inside of something.
Good
It's just
point.
not too clear what it is.
Well, I appreciate both you guys' input on that because I've tried to, I attended, they call it a home meeting here in town for 10 years, okay? And it was just a minification of the big top or the big show, okay? I mean, you had X amount of songs, you had prayer, then you had somebody expounding on scripture. Okay. So it really wasn't what I would consider anything close to being a Corinthian style Pauline home church meeting. And I kept saying over the period that we need to be able to share our lives with one another in a more intimate manner. And that was and the more I became, at first I was very subtle with it, trying to be PC. And the older I get, no, I throw PC out the window. I just can't deal with it anymore. And I was more or less thrown out of that because they just were not interested in hearing about the relational aspect, first of all, with our God and then each other. They weren't interested in that. So I went back to, I didn't go anywhere for a couple of years. Then I went back to this other church. And like Rob, I went into a Bible study, but oh man, that was so mindless that and if you ask questions, if you ask deep questions, oh man, like one night I brought up the fact that what do you guys do with the other Elohim that's mentioned in the Bible? Oh my land, that was heresy. There's only one God. And and from that point on, I mean, I got labeled a heretic.
We're just
So
happy you still have your head.
yeah, well, yeah. But I mean, and I just, hey, if you're gonna be that petty and not be able to deal with some of these questions, I don't fit in here. You see what I'm saying? I just don't, and I just couldn't deal with the mindless. Well, what does this verse say? And you're not looking at the original languages, and I'm not a. I think you even have to go further than the Greek because I don't think the original texts were written in the Greek. To be honest with you, I think they were probably in Aramaic or Hebrew or something like that. So how
You
do
got to
we know
figure
we've got
those guys were probably thinking in Hebrew or Aramaic, except for maybe like Mark. Maybe he was a original Greek speaker. Greek was his original language. He
Well, I
might be
don't
the
know,
only New Testament writer where Greek was his original language.
but
Rob and I were talking about this earlier. Those days in the original days of quote unquote Christianity, for the most part, these were all Jews. It was a quote unquote denomination of the Jewish religion.
Yeah,
Didn't have the name Christianity yet, but all these people came from the Jewish faith and tend to agree with you guys. It may very well have all been Hebrew before it got to Greek, or at
I
least
don't
in
know.
thought.
I don't know whether I've ever thought of this before, but when you were saying that we need to, um, Forrest, when you were saying that we need to share our lives with one another, I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool to have a group, say you have 20 people, and you do kind of something like speed dating, where you give
Yeah.
each person 15 minutes to sit and talk to one other person, and then you rotate.
yeah,
And then when you get all done with that,
I love it.
yeah,
when you get all
That,
done with that, or maybe only 5 minutes, so you can get around, to 20 people. 20 people be able to talk to each other. Um, it might take you a couple hours, even if only 5 minutes. But then you can go back and talk to somebody who had something you still you wanted to keep talking about it. Um,
Yeah. Hmm.
and then
Sounds to
bring
me
the
like
whole
it
group
could be
together
part
to
of the
sing.
ideal church service.
Yeah.
That's an
Because
idea that is a
Yeah.
distinctive idea that you could try, and there's not much of a downside to it. If it was a snoozer, that's
Yeah.
okay.
that's what bugs me about a lot of church gets-togethers. There's no icebreakers. They
Yeah.
give you no opportunity to get to know the other people there.
My guess is, and I have been wrong before, but not only would it not be a snoozer, I'll bet you'd end up having people start relationships with each other and getting
Yes.
to know each
Yes.
other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And relationals, the relational aspect, I'm sorry, but that's where my focal point is, because relationship first with God and then in turn ourselves and then each other.
I think that's what it really has always been or supposed to be about, in my opinion, Forrest. I agree 100%. It's all about relationship. It starts with yours and God's and goes on to ours and each other.
Yep.
Hey guys, I'm gonna have to run. It's about the turn of the hour. I don't want to
It is an
foreclose
hour.
on the
Yep.
discussion, but I'll be back probably another week. And
I congratulate you for being able to hold up for the hour and the other hour I tied you up earlier.
well, same to you, Steve. And it's nice talking to you all. And it's a never-ending story. It's probably not going to resolve itself today anyway.
No, but we'll take
Right.
another shot at it next week for whoever can show up.
Thanks, Rob and Larry. I appreciate your
That's
input.
great. Same to
Well,
you.
well, you brought up
Mhm.
Never Ending Story, so you can't leave until you sing a chorus of from the movie.
Oh no. Okay, that's not happening. Not now, not next week.
I love
Forget
the
about it.
scene. I love the
Just
scene from Stranger Things where Dustin and Susie get going singing that. Everybody's waiting for them to solve the problem, and they just keep singing. It's hilarious.
well, I'm not going to start.
We won't make you, Rob. Hey, Larry, before we wrap it up, I just wanted to review. You brought up that Hallelujah community.
Yeah,
Is it your understanding, if was I hearing you right, that it's a whole community that all lives in a specific geographic area? They all have to attend some kind of church. It can be different churches. Maybe there's even a non-denominational church in there. I don't know, or Jewish. I don't know. But they all gather as a community, not necessarily by church, but as a community. Did I
yeah.
hear
They
that
have
right?
a Thursday night Bible study. I think that they put it out on YouTube. I think. Um, but they're having I think they're having a conference this month. I had thought about going, but I'm trying to talk that other group I get together with on tonight, Sunday nights. Um, the guy who's most act kind of our at least he's the one that generates the conversation. He doesn't necessarily dominate, but he lives in down by Savannah.
Oh, so he's close to this.
He's relatively close to Augusta, so he might go to their conference. Um,
Well, I'm curious to learn out more. I'm going to check it out a little bit just
yeah,
because I'm
it's
curious
all
about the
over
concept.
online. There's a guy who's not there, but he knows a lot about it. His name is Daryl Wentworth. I could
Yeah, I
look on.
just the two things that are intriguing about it to me is that if they're really all meeting together as a community, regardless of denomination, which also means they're trying to unite regardless of denomination, which I just
Right.
think that's in today's society, you don't hear that. I mean,
Yeah, they're kind of unique. Well, there are other communities like that across the country. I just can't name them.
yeah,
If you poke around a little bit,
yeah, I'll do some poking around. Let you know
um,
if I find next week if you're still back here again.
Daryl
Anybody have
Wentworth.
anything they want to throw out before we wrap up? Rob is right. We've spent an hour already, believe it or not.
No. Thanks, guys. Catch you later.
All right, man.
I don't have any place else to go. We could go on.
Well, I do. I just
Well,
finished 3 hours, but I always enjoy talking to you guys. And next week, maybe I can stretch it out longer than an hour. But
I
I thank
got
you for your input, and it's always great to see you.
um, Daryl Wentworth is a deacon, which is kind of an he can do some of the stuff a priest can do in the Catholic Church, but not everything. I almost went into the diaconate myself, but they told me I was too old. By the time I could afford it, I was too old. But anyway, I might have been able to push myself in, but just as well. Um, Daryl Wentworth, he's up in I think he's a few blocks from where the CBN headquarters is, but in Virginia. So, but he's very involved in ecumenical stuff and very interested in this community because it is so ecumenical. Um, I could dig up the names of the people who are. I mean, I'm kind of the deal where you kind of connect and becomes Facebook friends, but you don't really communicate that much.
Right.
I'm kind of Facebook friends with some of the people involved with that. Um,
Yeah, I tagged my
Hallelujah
wife on something
community.
the other day and said, "Oh, did you know we have 455 mutual Facebook friends?" Like, who are they?
I have a lot more mutual Facebook friends with other people than I have with my wife because she's not in the same groups I am.
Oh, shoot. Well, Larry, I look forward to doing this again next week. You have a beautiful week and a beautiful meeting you got coming up later tonight yet, don't you?
Yep. Well, the scheduling has been kind of challenging because we often eat, at noon, so we have to eat earlier. It's noon here, so
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
and then if we go to the later mass or where the one we usually used to go to, it starts at 10:45, and we're 8.5 miles from the church, so it
Oh,
takes a
no.
little bit to get home. So I today she wanted to go to the Greek Orthodox Church, who meets at 9:45, but we didn't go. And I went to mass last night. I even went to confession
Feel better now?
a bit. Um, I figure if I'm going to be here, I'm going to at least somewhat play by the rules. So if I'm going to have, because if you don't feel like you can have communion for whatever reason, you go up and put your hands like this and say, "Just a blessing, please."
Yeah.
And I've been doing that for quite a while because I hadn't been to confession. So I went to confession,
Oh,
and now I could get the
eat
little
the bread and
wafer.
drink the wine.
I didn't drink the wine, but um,
All right,
anyway,
Larry. Well, thank you
I did
very
get to
much,
mass
man.
last night, and so I was free to get here as soon as I could inhale my lunch. I'll let you go.
All
Thank you.
right, buddy.
Bye.
Have a great one, brother. Talk to you soon.